So Housing Wire just came out with an article that says underlying fundamentals are significantly different than what we saw in the early 2000s. But they're hearing a lot of chatter about the boom in cash out refinances. And the presumption seems to be that it's destined to wreak havoc on the housing market and the economy at some point. Yeah, so Freddie Mac just put out a bit of data that Housing Wire reported on. And obviously towards the end of 2020, people are borrowing a lot of equity out of their homes. Now, this is still not where it was at the peak. I mean, obviously you can see in the same graph that this raging area right here throughout the middle, throughout 2006, 2007, there was multiple more amount of money taken. I mean, talking like 50 billion on one, and from our last quarter and in 2007, you can see by the graph, this is over 100 billion in a single quarter. So you have double the quarterly cash out refinance, people taking cash out of their house. The reason why this is troubling is because the more money borrowed, it creates a couple different effects. Number one, it creates an increased payment, okay? And number two, it creates a loss of equity. So you're reversing equity. You're basically borrowing against value. You're taking out more money out of the home itself. And then conceivably, if there is trouble, you're kind of creating two factors that are dangerous at the same time. You're increasing the value, what the home is, what's owed against the house that has to be paid off in sale. If there is duress or some issue, you have to sell the house. But then you've also got the situation where the payment has jumped. So, one might say, this is dangerous. This is a sign of issues, of things to come. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, I would say that the overall context of last year is definitely important to take into. I mean, if there was a year to take out money out in an emergency, it was 2020, right? A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people had to move. A lot of people, it became just a primary issue to pull out money to make the home nicer, because now a lot of people had to work from home. When people needed money, they looked to their home. They cashed out 80% of the value, which is actually, that's all the cash out refinances will let you go up to. They won't let you cash out refinance 100% of the value. They'll go up to 80% because they're banks, they're money, they're experts at money, right? So it's all being done safely, and I think taking into context the COVID market, I think it just makes sense. Something to note here is that people are sitting on a lot more equity than they were at the bubble. During the bubble, at the peak of it, they were at $4.6 trillion in total equity in the market. Total equity, right? The whole market had that much money. It didn't even reach 5. Right now, in our market, we're sitting at $7.3 trillion in cash outable equity, if that makes sense, right? So we are sitting on a lot more money. So seeing a small bump in the overall scheme of things, we're actually in a pretty safe. I mean, if there is going to be a crash, I wouldn't see why, since homes really aren't overpriced. We're not seeing the mortgage fraud that we saw. And this are going to go back and forth, but I mean, we're not seeing people qualify for homes that they're not actually qualified to own, right? And qualifying for payments from banks that they should never have had, just like it happened just a decade ago, right?